So yeah, I think let's just jump right into the questions. First question is, any thoughts as to the addition of the shield capacitors, like there were in PVN or Escape Velocity Nova, I believe, as a means of providing outfitting options for players that can reduce rapid deaths? So I think the idea here is that currently we only have like outfits that help you regenerate shields, and these outfits would just add more shields. That's my understanding. I believe Doom can probably talk about the balance aspect of these special ships.
Yeah, so definitely this we could balance this. It's not. I think it's been said before that they'd be difficult to balance, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. So the main reason I don't think that they're a good idea is that they're not the best way to go about solving the problem. Because when you're talking about sort of rapid deaths, that's generally sort of when you're in small ships early on where they've got not very much HP. That I think, I mean, I might be wrong, but I presume when those people complain about dying too quickly, that's the kind of ship they're in. The issue there is that those ships also tend to be ones that don't have very much outfit space. And when you're outfitting them, you've already got a situation where you've got lots of options, not very much space, and it's difficult to decide what you actually want. You need the hyperdrive, you need powered engines, shield generator, maybe you want a ram scoop. I don't actually think that it's a good approach to say, right, you need to install this other shield capacitor outfit as well so that you don't keep getting one shot by heavy rockets and torpedoes and stuff, when you've already got this really limited outfit space. If the sort of dying too rapidly thing is an issue, which I think it kind of is, I'd much rather look at other solutions that don't essentially impose an additional tax on the outfit space that small ships have.
What kind of alternative would you suggest?
I think if it's still a problem, because I know the actual damage per hit of heavy rockets was toned down a bit recently in exchange for giving them more blast radius. I think that's helped because it means that in a lot of cases where they would have knocked one of the particularly smaller ships out to be disabled or destroyed in one hit, now one salvo over one or two of them will leave you still just about alive and you can get away. So the only other weapon that you're facing at the start of the game that's doing that kind of damage is torpedoes. And if those are a problem, I think the thing to do with them would be to look at making it, somehow finding a way to make them less able to hit smaller ships, because that's not really something they're supposed to be doing anyway.
So it would be something like how disabled fighters don't get hit, but generalized for slightly larger ships like interceptors.
I don't think I'd do it I don't think I'd make a new mechanic. I might. So something that I would sort of like to look at is with optical tracking and infrared tracking. I don't think the difference. I don't think they actually scale as much as they perhaps should with the thing that they scale based on. So one thing we could potentially do is look at those and making it so that optical tracking weapons like the torpedoes are less effective than they are currently at tracking, say, in particular the starter ships, and therefore, and also maybe make some if you have cases where they're being used at close range or where you're not in a position to dodge because you're trying to keep guns on your target as well. Maybe trying to look at, are there changes we can make to the stats of the weapons that make them less effective when you're basically using them as unguided weapons at point blank range, with essentially the goal being, however we go about it, to make it so that you're much less likely when you're in these small ships that can't really take a hit from torpedoes to actually be hit by them.
And do you think that the current speed of torpedoes is alright for small ships? Like, maybe not in close quarters, but otherwise you can probably just avoid them if you fly carefully.
Yeah, the speed I think is fine. You can most sort of small ships you're going to be in. I think even a starboard now can outrun them with the mass changes. So the speed is fine. The issue is more that you can quite often. So in particular, I'm thinking when you're in sort of a light warship and you've got those the bounty missions where one of the things that can spawn is the Raven that's got 2 torpedo launchers. It's I've found really difficult when you're fighting those in a lot of similarly sized ship builds to fight them because your guns are on the front, their guns are on the front, you're both facing each other at close range. You trying to avoid the torpedoes means taking your main guns off target and taking fire from their guns. And really, when you're in sort of a small light warship or a large interceptor like a Headhunter or a Hawk, torpedoes shouldn't be as much of a threat for you as I think they currently are. So that's something I'd like to look into. Maybe, I mean, we tried making them slower to accelerate before. That caused other problems, but maybe giving them a delay before they start moving perhaps is something we could consider. But I mean, we've got a lot fewer complaints, I think, about people dying too quickly. So I think it was more the heavy rockets that are the problem. Because, of course, the other thing is because heavy rockets are an unguided weapon and torpedoes are a guided weapon. When you have enemies that only have torpedoes, they will use the long-range firing AI. They'll try and get away from you and use their range advantage. And that gives you all the time you need to avoid them. It was when you had just heavy rockets or a mixture of torpedoes and heavy rockets, they will try and get close to you and point towards you to hit you with the heavy rockets instead. And that's this kind of thing. And there's one particular Hawk build that's got one heavy rocket pod and one torpedo pod, and that I think is what kills a lot of people. So the nerfs to heavy rockets, or well, changes, will have helped a lot with that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. One thing I sometimes do with like smaller ships is relying on reverse thrusters. Instead of turning away from the smaller missiles, I just reverse, and sometimes I can still outrun them while I can keep firing. But it takes up gun ports or weapon space, which is a really heavy trade-off on those small ships.
Yeah. Yeah, so the other thing, sort of going back to the other thing in the question, talking about the shield capacitors, although we have, you could make them in the current code. You can make a plugin adding them really easily. I kind of think that it's nice the way that when you have a ship, the amount of HP it has is tied inherently to the ship and not to its outfits. It's just sort of, so you can still make it tougher by installing more regen, but the actual HP of the ship, that's inherent to the ship rather than being something you change with outfits. That's kind of it's a thematic thing rather than a sort of balance thing. So, but that's sort of the other reason why we don't really do shield capacitors.
Yes, and also that some species simply don't have shields, so we don't even know if standard shield capacitors will work with whatever material they use for the hull. Like in the lore, it might not make sense at some point.
Yes, that's also true. But when you've got ships like the Gegno ships in particular, where a big part of the sort of theming and the faction is that they don't have any shields at all, you kind of water that down and lose it if you have the ability to just stick shields onto any ship.
Okay, so the second question is, are there any creative story decisions that you wish you could go back in time and change? Any branches that you regret? Uh, and I think we all know about the high reveal stuff and how most of it is still disabled in the main game. That's yeah, that's something that wasn't handled properly. Honestly, other than that, sure, there were some minor things, but they were mostly fixed in follow-ups. I know that uh, quite a few such cases in the Freewords campaign were rewritten 2 years ago. Uh, I think I pretty much all loved Alondo stuff, for instance, that was just done really weirdly. That got a rewrite. It's now much better. Yeah, like in terms of the major parts of the story, there I don't that many things that we regret, I think.
I think I would look at the cloak. I think it's really overpowered, preventing follow-up stories. Do you already have many tickets about it?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd definitely like to have a look at maybe making cloaking a bit more balanced as a mechanic, but from the story perspective, it's not the story side of that I think I would like to change. So I think the way the cloaking device appears in the story and use it to hide from the spoilers, but that I think that's good. But yes, I do think maybe it's a bit overpowered, and we should have a look at that.
I think I would change it to a formation of all kinds of small ships around the main ship. That you basically get a shield of small ships around you, and that they take the nukes for you. Something I was considering. But, yeah, it's just an idea.
Derpy actually had a similar idea for something like that, where because in Syndicate space they'll sometimes give you the mission to disable their test robot ships. I think his idea was that for the last battle they would send you in with a big fleet of the robot ships that obviously don't have anyone in and are therefore disposable to sponge up the nukes.
Oh, yeah, sounds like a good idea.
Well, someone posted one of the issues open about cloaking is active jamming proposal for just, I think, disabling the cloaking device. You have a jammer. This idea. And that doesn't really affect the syndicate battles or the bug battles. Yeah, like using just a smaller fleet of disposable ships as protection is like it is sensible, but it's also just a death sentence to all of those people who are on the small ships.
Yeah, I think that was the idea behind these sort of syndicate robot ships being used instead.
Do the syndicate actually have any robot ships?
So they're not automaton, although they probably should be. But you get those you get jobs in Syndicate space where it says disable the Syndicate's robotic testing dummy, and then turn over the results or something like that. If I can find that.
The
problem is that when you dodge the nukes, then you're actually fighting syndicates, so it needs to be someone else with robotic ships, I guess. I guess the Navy should also be able to wire up some ships with autopilot stuff.
Well, at that point, you're fighting the extremist syndicates. At that point, that's after the Pug War and after all that. So the syndicate are on your side and they're helping you because they're the ones who give you the cloaking device as well. Currently.
Oh, okay. I should really play the game again someday.
Yeah, it's a good game. It's worth playing if you haven't. That goes for anyone here.
Most here will have played it a bit. Yep.
I mean, they could just, like, the Navy could just lend you some combat drones, like maybe a couple nests or carriers worth of combat drones, and just have them send all the nukes.
Oh, there we go. That's one of the syndicate testing job things I was mentioning. These ones.
Do you know if the Burmese free world test ships that you try out the flamethrowers and things on, are those also robotic?
I think they use the same government as the syndicate ones, and they've got all the I mean, the hails from that government, I think, are all, or at least mostly, references to robots and sci-fi. So yeah, I think those ones I think are basically also robots. But again, I don't think they are automaton tagged yet, which they probably should be.
And people are asking for the next question, which is, what is the process for becoming a reviewer? So essentially, if you are a core member, then at some point some reviewer or dev will suggest you be a reviewer, and then people discuss it, and I think there is a vote or something. And I think there is a discussion in the review chat and in the community organizer chat. And if people like you and do good work, and they think that you would make a good reviewer, then they ask you, and you accept, and you become a reviewer. That's essentially the process.
The most
So,
important
yeah.
step is do a lot of reviews. That's where it starts, I guess.
Yeah, if you consistently do lots of good reviews on a particular topic, you'll probably end up becoming a reviewer.
And like just approving things blankly isn't a good review. It actually has to be like in depth and like suggesting changes where they are necessary. Like, actually noticing things, what makes a reviewer, not just looking at it. But yeah, even if you are not a reviewer, you can do reviews on GitHub. It doesn't need any kind of permissions. It's going to work, and do it enough, they will notice you. Generally, it is a requirement to be a member of the server as well, because that's where a lot of the discussions happen around reviewer stuff. I know that there are some people who don't want to mix Discord and GitHub. Discord has its own set of issues, but for the reviewer role, it's pretty much essential. However, I think it is essential to become reviewer. I know that there were cases where reviewers weren't in the Discord or weren't active here, even if they were technically present in the server. But I don't remember a single time when someone became a reviewer without being in the server. Actually, I don't even think we have like a good way of contacting people privately outside of Discord, because we don't necessarily have their email addresses on GitHub. I'm just waiting for reply. He's typing in the chat. Okay, so what we're saying that it's essentially just coincidence, and it's not a requirement. Maybe. Like, I don't know how we would approach or contact someone who isn't on Discord. Zichas, I believe he's a community organizer. Uh, yes, because he was a moderator, but then he stepped down, and he's still a CEO, yes. And a GitHub admin also. So he does have all of the like permissions and stuff that the reviewers have, and a lot more. But yeah, like his primary function, and to put it that way, is not a reviewer. Yeah, he's still technically in this server, just doesn't really like. So the next question is asking about when the FK would into the game. Azure, I know you are saying. Right now we are struggling even to get the successors in, which might or might not happen in the unstable release. The FK won't. Like they probably will get into the next unstable. Nothing is for sure, but if it's actually done by now, which it wasn't when I last looked at it, but if it's done and we can actually get the successors in the next month or two, then there is a pretty good chance that the FK might make it in. Or there's a pretty good chance that they make it in. Yeah, that's how English.
Yeah, I think most likely they will be in 0, 10, 11, which I think, because the one that's coming out later this month is 0, 10, 9, which they probably won't be in. But I think, are hoping to get them into the next release, which is the 0, 10, 11, which is January, I think.
Yeah, it's 1 month for the stable and then 3 more for the unstable, I believe.
Right, so that would put the
Yeah,
stable in October, and then yeah, the next unstable in January. So yeah, if you're playing on the Steam release January, if you're playing on continuous January or possibly sooner, depending on when exactly. But yeah, sometime between October and January, because they definitely won't be merged during the stable release cycle, because that's not what we do.
yeah. Oh, and there is also Petir 2 that we are supposed to look at. Yeah, that's probably also the next unstable release. So one of the main things we are waiting on in terms of successors is just Soga's art review, and also, I suppose, it also looks at the sounds, and Soga has been really busy for the past couple of weeks, so they just kept getting pushed out. Essentially, when Soga has time, we can probably get the successors merged within a week. But currently, Soga doesn't have the time, and I really don't want to get it merged without him because we really need his input. Azure, I think Tier 3 is already being worked on. I don't know what state it's in, but I'm pretty sure it's like at least partially done. So that might actually happen. Petir, okay. So the next question is about balance once again. Oh, it's a long one. Close of the screen.
Yes, so when you're filling out this form, please bear in mind that there is a limit to how long the thing we look at the results in actually displays. So try to actually that seems to be a new thing because on some of the other ones it's split over multiple lines, but maybe it splits. If you put a long result answer in, split it into multiple lines because otherwise it'll run off the edge. Yes.
What just a lot of extra info.
Yes. Anyway, so in terms of the answer, so yes, first of all, you're right that systems cores are massively better than human shield generators. That's true of more or less every alien that has shield generation, their shield generation. The human shield generators are, as you have probably noticed, awful. But they're actually, if you work it out, at least last time I checked, they actually don't work out better than Heliarch tech. For if you combine coalition batteries, Heliarch hull repair, and Heliarch shield generators, that does work out better than systems cores. The other downside that the systems cores have is that although they do provide hull repair, they provide a very small amount. So if you are, for example, facing piercing or disruption weapons, you may find that actually, although they provide hull repair, if you end up needing more, and they're a very bad way to acquire more of that. So they do certainly have downsides. They might be too strong overall, nonetheless, and I think probably they are the best option, possibly too large of a portion of the time. But yeah, they're not quite as strong as you seem to think.
And when you compare them against Heliarch tech, was it just against like how much fusion and hard repair and energy storage you could get in the same outfit space, or are they also more efficient?
They're definitely more efficient because the Heliarch. I just bring the numbers up. So the Heliarch one, the actual generation is 1 energy per unit generated for both the shields and the hull. And you've got a small additional cost of, I think, yes, there's a bit of extra. So it's 1-to-1, and then there's a little bit of extra heat on the shield to deal with, and there's a little bit of extra heat on the repair, which again is easy to deal with. Whereas with the systems cores, I think it's about 1.5 energy for each point of shield that you get back. And likewise for and for the hull, it's 1-to-1, and there's more heat than the Heliarch ones. But for the systems cores are a bit less energy efficient. They're still better than the Wanderer ones that run at 2-to-1, which is I think is the least efficient that we have, unless you count the Benrodia ones with the boosters. But yes, the Heliarch ones are more energy efficient than the system cores, and they also give more raw generation per space. So the Heliarch ones are better. The other ones less. The Wanderer ones generally aren't better than the systems cores, and of course the systems cores have the downside that if you just want hull repair, the amount of hull repair you're getting per unit of space is actually really quite bad. Because I mean, with the large systems core, you've got 48 hull repair in a 91-ton outfit, so that's the drawback.
So generally, Heliarch tech is more customizable and also more efficient and more powerful. Like, isn't that a bit too strong overall?
Well, yeah, the Heliarchs are they're half a tier higher than the Korath, so by the same principle that human shield generators are bad because they're lower tech, the Heliarchs are a sort of higher tech, more advanced faction. And so really what I haven't actually done and would be interesting to do is run the comparison between the Benrodia shield and hull repair outfits and the systems cores. So yes, that would be, I think, a more equivalent comparison in terms of the sort of tech level. And yes, I think Hector is right there. We will have a look at the stats of the Heliarchs again once the Quag have been statted out. Although they may end up going up or down depending on how the Quag end up looking. But yes.
So the next question is very generic and isn't even specific to Endless Sky. It's asking why there is so much drama in the open source game community. Specifically asking about my open source game community, which I don't know what they mean by that, so I'm just making it a generic question. So in general, pretty much all major open source projects have a lot of drama. In fact, all projects, even commercial projects, have that. A lot of that is just hidden because much of the internal drama doesn't get out. And even then, they have like PR people who are paid to take care of it. Yeah, everything has a lot of drama.
Yeah, and I think really in the project where there's money involved in the corporate structure, generally people will have at least the same amount of disagreements, if not more so, and they will not talk about it because they need to at least convince the person who they are being paid by that they like them. So I think that's the real. Whereas in an open source thing, we don't have that. Anyone can say how they actually feel. So I don't think there's more dissatisfaction in open source communities. It's just that you're not sort of under an impetus to keep quiet about it. That's my take on the matter.
And there's also another case where like corporations just straight up take open source projects and they use them commercially and they don't even donate or anything. Like they just strip mine open source. That's what it's called. And it also creates really unfair expectations. Like a couple of weeks ago, there was this article I read about how like some Microsoft developer making some really egregious demands of some unpaid open source developer because some like I think it was with FFmpeg, like some feature they used the Microsoft Teams stopped working and they just started harassing the developers over it. And that's not something that we get in this case, but with other open source projects, it definitely happens. And I think that also gets classified as open source drama, even though it's mainly just bad people being bad. So people here are talking about how, like, what kind of availability the developers have, and Azure is suggesting that reviewers have more weight. I'm not sure what you mean by that.
I think there's a lot of. To be fair, there's a lot of pull requests that sort of sit around for a while, and they've got sort of 2, 3, maybe even 4 approvals from reviewers in the relevant area. I think there's a couple. There was one, the NPC travel instructions, for example. I think that's got 4 approvals and has had for a while, and it's sort of been sitting open. So maybe we could think. Maybe I think that we could think about sort of being more quick to merge those, but I mean, that's a code one, so I'm not really not my area of expertise, I suppose.
The thing with code is that even if, like, I look at it, like, sometimes I just miss things, and that when Warp looks at them, it just knows that they actually have, like, a better way of doing it, or that's not how things are actually supposed to work, so to speak. That's why even, like, developer alone might not be enough in some cases to merge a pull request. Reviewers even less so. A simple code pull request off, and I think it's much easier with content. But like that NPC travel instructions is, I think, a fairly large pull request. I also think it's based on a lot of code that Warp actually wrote. Maybe that was quick, but I think that was Warp who had most of the original code. That's yes, NPC was that ouch. Oh, okay. So one of the developers wrote the original code for that. Now someone else maintains it and did some rewrites, but still want someone to, like, look at it, because I never actually, like, did anything with NPC stuff. Like, I don't really write missions with NPCs or in general. I don't know what kind of behavior people would expect or would need in the game. And that's something that I think a developer should be aware of when reviewing such a pull request. Like, does this pull request actually satisfy the people asking for the feature? And that's something that I can't really say. So NPC travel instructions. And Dan is talking about his missions. They are on my list. They have been on my list for 6 months at least. Yeah, there is a lot of stuff that we are to look at. More things keep coming up all the time. It's also difficult to just find the, like, mental energy to sit down and review. Was that around 1,500 lines of content I think is what one of your missions is. Yeah. A lot, but should really be reviewed, definitely. Actually, it's not really a priority thing. More about just like, yeah, this pull request can't be reviewed in like 15 minutes. So if I like only have 15 minutes, I'm not going to review it. I'm going to look at something else that I can actually get done. And also, actually, just having the time and mental energy to focus on something for a couple of hours, which, even if you're reviewing 1500 lines, it's going to take you probably around an hour if you're paying attention. So it does depend on what you are reviewing. If you're only looking at the grammar or only the mission syntax, then it might be different. Overall, it's going to take you quite some time. Okay, so Azure, that's slightly different when talking about the FG. Really, we are right before an unstable release. And it's something that we really want to get in, something that is at least very nearly ready for merging, and it's major content that we want to get in. So that gets priority. It's not because how many lines it is. It's like 9,000 lines, the successors. Oh, well, I don't remember what was said 4 months ago. Yes, but there is definitely like limited periods and people actually have the free time to look at major pull requests all at once. So that's definitely a thing where maybe some people can mostly only focus on them during the summer or one of their breaks or whatever. That just happens with life and availability. It's not really something that's in our control, but yeah. I did notice that there were less missions in the FGPR, even less that worked. Oh, an extra 1,000 of lines for FK. Nice. I suppose that's another reason why people don't necessarily want to look at it, because it's still getting these massive updates, significant. I, I don't know how much this changes just for, but if it's still, like, it gives off the impression that it's still actively being developed, which is generally not in a state when you want to review the full request. Yeah, so I wouldn't say that the core PR has been done because a lot of the assets just done. Like they weren't even made. No, I think that's part of the core PR. But we are really just getting off topic. Someone is asking if they need to sign up to post a plugin. I actually don't think so. I think you are talking about the Steam forum, and you don't need to do that. So we have GitHub repository where you can just make a pull request. We have like a syntax and like a README about it. Zip2 posted the link to the repository. You can look at other people who added plugins here. There is even an open pull request. You can look at that. It contains pretty much everything you need to add the plugin to this repository. And it's automatically going to be available in ES Launcher. I think it will show up on the website as well. It can get automatic updates as a full package. You only need to be up on GitHub. But yeah, you can also just post like links to the plugin or the plugin zip pretty much where. I didn't even know that we had GOG forums. So we actually have like moderators set up for the GOG forum. Because I think we have them synchronized with, but not with GOG. I don't think. Actually, half of the questions here got response. And that's not bad. Oh, and one of the others answered itself. And another one is about multiplayer, which, yeah, a GOG discussion probably isn't the best for that. Put first issue tag GitHub. We could have that, I suppose. We don't have any kind of automation for adding labels currently. We're working on some of it. But I think that would make more sense if we could actually automatically add that pull request where it's a must burst request. I think GitHub has something for that. But yeah, if it's actually good, then we can't automate it. Yeah. Because it needs to be a good request. Yeah. And we could just wait for it to be merged and then add the label afterward. Because if it was merged, then it's good. But yeah, this wouldn't work with issues necessarily, only pull requests. Warp, so actually KDE, I believe, is like a system where they estimate how long a certain task takes, and then they add that as a label or project or whatever. You can just look at it and based on how much time you have available, and just choose some bug fix or something that would be done in the time that you have available. I think that's a good system, and that's something we could implement. So estimating the actual time requirement is actually good, especially if you don't know anything about like the expected or average level of knowledge from the contributors. For this one way to look at it, but if you can just, if someone is eager to contribute, but like doesn't have any ideas for like new features or something, I think having like some place where we can point them to and say that like, hey, these are fairly simple issues. If you would like to help, this is a good place to start. Like, I think some of the authorships encourage you to like go and fix typos, which is essentially the equivalent of this, but for code. Yeah, ZipRoot says that many of their PRs are based on easy to fix issues that no one was really looking at. So we would essentially just collect those issues and categorize them. Warp, it's not just about identifying the issue. Like, we have how many hundreds of open issues. Like, digging through them and finding something that's actually wanted and is easy, that's going to take you some time. Zipwood said that most of the issues were simple that they fixed, or many of them. So apparently there are like such features that are not looked at by many people. So eBOP also brought up some issue about it. Oh, it's a remnant. A remnant mission missing a failure dialog. think we actually have like pull requests for changing stuff in Cognizance. I don't know if that actually resolves this. I think Warp has some remnant changes. I don't know if this one is or if it fixes this specific issue. This does seem fairly simple. Yeah. Warp actually has two open pull requests that affect inner code. Neither of which actually resolves this issue. So, okay, so like this one, yeah, it's something that could be fixed. So we are out of questions on the Google form. I'll post the link. Anything there, or if you have any other questions, just post them on Discord. That also works. Just put it in the chat here and I will read it and answer. Leaf, did you finish addressing all of my changes? Because last time I looked at it, you were missing part of the refactor that I asked for. Oh, okay, I will look at it again then. Oh, never mind if you are still waiting, I suppose. The meeting minutes. Yeah, we discussed it. We weren't really comfortable with recordings, some of us, and couldn't really find a feasible way of doing it otherwise. And in some cases, it also just isn't something that like we would really want or need. And I'm sure that some of the other tabs can reiterate their arguments if they wish, but yeah, it's not quite as trivial as it sounds.
I've done a lot of note taking in professional organizations. On one hand, that's correct. You really make good meeting minutes. It really helps later on to refer to decisions and things like that. But the tricky thing is most people are not really professional organization with volunteers. I think what really helps, though, I do agree with the part of note making. If we really have some major decisions or some major insights or some major directions, then we should definitely document it. I think that is, that makes the meeting valuable.
Another question in the chat a bit earlier was also from Azure about the story map pull request. Last I heard, Warp still had some issues with it. I don't know what the latest development is. I know that I had issues with it as well. It seems that on GitHub I don't see anything new from Warp, but I feel like I read something on Discord about it, but could be confusing it with something. Yeah, I seem to recall like a conversation about like the contrast of supernovas on Discord. I don't know what the end result was of that. It didn't make its way into GitHub. So there was apparently something in content creating a couple of days ago. So Warp replied to Azure with a ping. And I don't see any further replies from Azure. There is some. I don't know what actually really difficult to follow. So you think it's fine, but Warp doesn't apparently. I mean, if some dev fine with it, they might decide to merge it. But if Warp isn't fine with it, he isn't. Okay. It's really difficult to follow that conversation, so maybe got some stuff wrong. Yeah. Yes, I definitely agree with Peter that discuss something about a PR and like there is a decision that affects that pull request, and you should definitely put that on the pull request. But compiling all of the various things we put onto the pull request during a meeting or as a result of a meeting isn't that much more useful, because all of the people who like maintain the pull request already had that notification and that information. So yeah, just putting it on the PR is easier and is more useful generally. I don't think anyone actually ever said that the AVG PR is this huge bloated mess that's impossible to do, as you put it. I don't think anyone said that, and I haven't looked at it in depth enough to if it's true or not. But like this, but it's interesting because there are lots of pull requests that have plenty of images. The MPPR isn't unique in that. We absolutely do have the ability to filter them out. People are generally aware of that. We had like in the past like massive image pull requests that had like dozens or hundreds of images for like animated space life, and then they had some text files for creating the space life government tips beats. When I was looking at them, I just filtered out the images, and as far as I know, most people are aware of that. Now there are some cases where GitHub itself has issues. That's outside of our control. If you look at the unfettered pull request, for instance, GitHub really struggles with that. And it doesn't even have like that many images or files, but the sheer number of commits there seems to break something with GitHub. Like most of the time I load it, it times out the first time, and after that it's still buggy, really slow to move around, and sometimes merging master doesn't work properly, and workflows might not get triggered properly. Like there's a lot of weirdness going on with that. It's not impossible that the FG pull request also has similar issues on the GitHub side. If it does, there is not much we can do about it. And 14 lines is a lot. Like, yeah, that is a fact. Like if it's 14,000 lines, which I don't know if it is, but yeah, if it is, then that's a fact. It doesn't mean that it doesn't or shouldn't get reviewed, or if that doesn't happen because 14,000 lines. But Yeah, but someone still needs to look at it, even if it's not mission. If it's fleet definitions, then we have to look at it. If it's system definitions, we still have to look at it. We have to check the habitable zones for planets, things like that. If it's ship and outfit definitions, we have to check the balance. Like, it's not just missions that get reviewed. It's everything. Sure, it's maybe not the same people, same and everything, but okay, so people have actually looked at the aggregate request. That's good. But then it does get reviews, I suppose. If that's what Azure was talking about. Okay, so part of that not ready for review issue was that the pull request was in a draft state. And on GitHub, draft literally means not ready for review. Like word per word, that is the description that GitHub uses in most places around drafts. And I know you took it out of draft state, but for a long time, that's why people weren't looking at it that much. And some of them just translated fast. And even I said that sometimes it gets like major updates, like 1,000 lines of new content, which is also discouraging reviewers. It's kind of unfortunate that it happens this way, of course. Yeah, it will be looked at, definitely. Uh, Azure is saying that it doesn't think it discouraged anyone that is actually involved with reviewing it, but it's a bit of a tautology because, like, if someone is already reviewing it, then yeah, they're not concerned, and if they were discouraged by it, then they aren't reviewing it. So yeah, yes, I also agree with Hector. Like, we didn't get any really new questions here, and I think it's the third time that the app have been brought up just this Campfire chat, and it's also brought up every single time we have like a Campfire chat or board meeting or whatever. Uh, as far as I know, there has been no development for ARG. I don't actually know who is involved with that project. I am not. It will probably involve Doom for the balance, and was it? I can just look at the project Doom probably. Soga and Todd, a lot of stuff there. Yeah, I don't have any news for you, University Park. All right, then I think this is the end of this Campfire chat. The next Campfire chat will be early in October, whatever the date out to be. We are being very professional here. It's the 5th of October, I believe, or Saturday. And bye.
Okay, thanks a lot for hosting it, and have a good day as well.